You're listening to the Trade Show Insights Podcast, Season 11, Episode 1. I'm your host and exhibit marketing strategist, Marlis Arnold, bringing you tools to improve your exhibit results. Today's episode is brought to you by the Exhibit Marketers Cafe. For this first episode of the new year, it seemed appropriate to get some perspective on the trade show industry, the current trends and successes, as well as challenges and where we're headed. And so we've got a very special guest for you today. Our guest today is the Executive Director of the Exhibit and Event Marketers Association, or better known as E2MA. And in his 30 years of trade show marketing and management, Jim Wurm has worked on both the show management and the exhibit service side of the business. He launched and organized trade shows throughout the U.S. and in Europe and has worked for I&D companies as Director of Marketing and National Manager. He created and managed some of his own trade shows and has served as Group Director of High-Tech Shows for Miller Freeman, Inc., which was at the time the third largest show organizer in the world. And in recent years, Jim has used his unique trade show experience for the development and management of the Exhibitor Appointed Contractor Association, which was a trade show industry association dedicated to raising the level of service excellence on the show floor, and now is at E2MA, which I'll have him explain a little bit about that history and how that all came to be. But thank you very much for today, Jim, to share your perspective on the trade show industry.
Well, thanks, Marlis. Happy to be here.
Well, let's start out and talk a little bit about E2MA. And, it's a fairly new association, but yet it's got some long-standing roots in history. So can you explain a little bit about how E2MA came to be?
Yeah, I sure can. Thanks. We, as you had mentioned in the introduction, had been operating under the banner of the nonprofit called the Exhibitor Appointed Contractor Association. There's quite a number of companies that service exhibitors in our industry that didn't feel like they had representation on the national level to other stakeholders in the industry. So we formed that association and made an effort to engage with show organizers and facilities and contractors and unions and display builders as well as exhibitors to talk about the issues that related to the setup and tear down primarily of shows, because obviously a good number of the exhibitor appointed contractors are hired to provide products or services on the show floor, and that leads to a level of complexity that requires a heightened amount of communication between all the parties to make sure that it comes together, because trade shows as they move in and out of convention centers, as you're well aware, are pretty much more like hive activity than they are any kind of hierarchical top-down control. There's a lot of different moving parts that all have to find ways to collaborate and cooperate and work together. And our function as an association was to see what we could do to improve that process so that it worked as well as it could possibly work for everybody involved. And as a result of that effort, our closest relationships were with exhibitors, because we were really, for the most part, working to advocate for exhibitors and find ways to improve the value proposition for them at the event, and worked closely with their primary organization at the time, which was the Trade Show Exhibitors Association. TSI was an organization that had a long history of 45 plus years, and we had a very close relationship with them. Unfortunately, as a result of the downturn in the economy in 2008, TSI fell on some hard times, and then in 2012 approached us at the EACA and said, would we be interested in combining the memberships of the two organizations under a new brand and a new banner as the Exhibit and Event Marketers Association, and we did, and that's how the E2MA came about in April of 2012.
And so now moving forward, would you say you've got a pretty balanced membership between exhibitors and contractors?
Yeah, in fact, we do. The populations are pretty equivalent. All of our memberships are corporate memberships. We have in the neighborhood of about 250 corporate members on each side. We'd like to see that grow, particularly from the exhibitor side. But, yeah, we are still in the business of finding ways to improve the value proposition for trade show exhibitors, helping them find ways to optimize their event programs, do a better job of controlling their costs and improving their ability to measure outcomes, and at the same time finding ways to streamline the process for exhibitors and their exhibitor-appointed contractors at the show so that all are able to do their jobs as efficiently and productively as possible.
Well, and on that, let's talk a little bit about, because since you are at the head of this organization that works with both sides, what are you seeing as some of the biggest challenges that are facing exhibitors and therefore also the contractors right now? What are some of the things to be on the horizon for 2016?
Well, one of the things that continues to be a factor and will, I think, continue to be a factor in 2016 and has for some time is still a hangover from the economy downturn at the end of the last decade, 2008 and 2009, where budget concerns are still a significant issue that puts a lot of pressure on exhibitors to find ways to better manage their budgets and control their costs. That puts a lot of cost pressure on their suppliers as well. So everybody is still very much in the mode of trying to do more with less, which continues to be a challenge to efficiently manage the process so that contractors can perform their duties and services and sell their products and still do that in a profitable way so that they can maintain their businesses, and the exhibitors are under constant pressure from senior management to manage budgets and do not only more with less in terms of their own budget dollars that they expend, but in terms of their time. Many exhibit management staffs have been cut to the bone, so to speak. With we routinely survey our both populations, and most of our exhibitors would say that the one thing that they like to have more of, in addition to a little bit more budget flexibility, would be just either more internal or external support or just more hours in the day to get their job done.
I think we can all relate to that scenario.
Right.
So then flipping over to the contractor side and kind of where things are going, what do you see as far as tools or technology or just ideas in general that are coming out on the supplier side that are helping exhibitors to do their job better?
Well, I think the suppliers and the contractors that are doing best are those that realize that they need to be a resource for their customers, and that includes helping them find ways to generate savings, to find new approaches to doing events, to come up with either newer, lighter materials that might help save money on the cost of shipping and drayage, to find ways to generate more of an engaged experience in the booth space through technology. Technology is definitely a big driver in the market these days because it creates more of an opportunity to create an engaged experience, or either to create the experience or to capture the substance of what happened in the booth, because the flip side of the cost and the budget drivers is an aching need for exhibitors to do a better job of measuring outcomes, because cost is always counterbalanced by the ability to generate information about what the investment was able to generate.
Well, and on that note, I know that E2MA is involved with a forecast and measurement tool for exhibitors. Can you explain a little bit more about what that is and how that works?
Yeah. One of the first things we did as the association formed a couple of years ago was to see what we could do to drive the conversation to the full spectrum of titles within the marketing organization. Up until that time, our experience was that if you use the trade show environment metaphor that trade shows are like business theater, most of the conversation within the exhibit marketing space was not necessarily directed at the director or the producer, meaning like the senior marketer in the marketing organization. Most of the education and conversation was, in our view, directed at the stage manager or the exhibit manager, the one that runs the production and has the budget and knows exactly what is supposed to happen. But we wanted to, as an organization, provide information and content to senior marketers as well, because they're the funding source. They're the folks that come up with the strategies and determine which events companies go to. So we conducted a study in partnership with the CMO Council, which is a global organization of chief marketers that wanted to find out what their perspectives and what their attitudes and needs and wants were in the event marketing space. And to no one's surprise, they indicated primarily that they have a real difficult time identifying and controlling the cost of participation, but even a bigger challenge in measuring outcomes. So we took it upon ourselves as an association to begin the process of helping them solve that problem by creating a forecasting and measurement tool that can help marketers not only determine what they get out of an event, but be able to forecast in a forward planning way as to what would be the appropriate budget for the opportunity at the show based on the number of potential contacts, the target audience, how many we were going to be able to interact with in the given number of show hours, and then use that as a tool from the forecast to measure outcomes by way of doing the necessary soft skills that are important to trade show success, like pre-event marketing, appointment setting, lead tracking strategies, staff training. I think that's one of the areas where we find that many companies tend to overlook, which is you're putting your company on display at the event in the entire competitive marketplace. How prepared is your staff to carry forward the message, create the experience that you're looking for? We tend to spend as an industry too much focus on how we build the set and how we educate the stage manager. We feel like we need to balance that conversation by engaging, as I said before, the directors and the producers, and training the actors to carry out the story of the play.
Well, that's a very good way of putting it. I mean, nobody would put on a play and just build beautiful sets and never have any rehearsals with their actors.
Exactly. So yeah, that's what we're working on and have been working on this year. In fact, we were in the midst of a project with a number of event organizers who also recognize the need to educate their exhibitors, because when their exhibitors are more successful, so is their show. Trade show organizers, we have recently learned, are really have a heightened awareness around doing whatever they can to improve their own ability to acquire exhibitors and retain exhibitors. And they realize that they can't just be in the business of selling reservations at the theater or booth space. They really need to be in the process of teaching their customers how to use the environment to generate the results they're looking for.
Well, exactly. And it all goes back to what you were talking about earlier about the whole premise of E2MA being the suppliers and the exhibitors working together as a team to create success, and the same thing, the show organizers come into that as well. I know what's
right.
amazing, you're talking about the lack of education. I know, from all the exhibitor workshops I've taught all over the country over the last couple of decades, how many times I've had exhibitors come up to me and say, we've exhibited in however many shows over the last 12 or 15 or 20 years, and this is the first time anybody's ever offered us education. And, that just seems so backwards that, the education is kind of like almost an afterthought instead of it being a core part of building that success, because, like you said, there's so many things besides just building a great booth to making that a successful venture. So
right.
I think it's great that you're working with the actual, marketing officers now and getting them involved, because I think that's another problem in the industry is there's always been this huge disconnect between, the marketing department and then, some person that got assigned, okay, you go out and do the trade shows. And so I think when it all becomes a part of the overall process, the whole marketing process, it's going to be a lot more successful in general. So this measurement tool that you have, I know is available. You have a link to it on your website, and we will definitely include that in the show notes. Is that something just for E2MA members, or is that something that anybody can have access to?
It's really something that any exhibitor can have access to. There is preferred pricing for E2MA member companies, but anybody can have access to the tool, which we call predictability, by the way. And it's had great success with the folks that are using it. We have lots of not only anecdotal evidence, but case study evidence, companies that have used the tool and increased their results by sometimes up to 100% in terms of their ability to track their outcomes and control their costs.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, like I said, we'll have a link to that in the show notes, so listeners can go and check that out. Let's talk a little bit, because the industry, the Center for Exhibition Industry Research has been coming out with reports and showing that the industry is continuing to grow and bounce back from those dreary, dark years of, like you said, 2008, 2009. So let's talk a little bit about where the industry is going, what are some of the trends and the opportunities available on the horizon. We talked about challenges. Now let's look at opportunities.
Yeah, I think that we see a lot of new ideas coming out focused on that. One of the ways to solve the challenge of the budget crunch is to do a better job of measuring the outcomes, and there are lots of new technologies coming down the pike to assist with that. And hopefully the results will be that companies will do a better job of having analytics to prove the value of events and trade show participation. There's many more technologies appearing within the scope of events, too, to find ways to help people connect at the event itself. We're seeing a heightened trend in hosted buyer programs, whereby in order to bring in the power buyers, conferences are hosting and having sponsored VIP sort of attendees come in and meet in one-on-one environments with their sponsors and exhibitors. We think that trend will continue, because one of the other challenges that show organizers face and continue to face is the ability to attract and generate an audience for their events. And so one of the solutions for overcoming that is through the hosted buyer program. We see that working and succeeding, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from our exhibitor members that they really enjoy those. We also are noticing that there's a heightened sort of sensitivity to the fact that we can't just build the sets anymore, as we talked about earlier, that we really need to create an experience of a brand, of a marketing, of a company that's marketing itself at a show, particularly as it relates to attracting the millennial generation. They don't want to just be spoken at, they want to be part of the conversation. And
right.
So exhibitors are finding better ways, we see, to engage their prospects and customers at the show. In fact, engagement is a theme, I think, that we will continue to promote, and beyond the sort of definition of just how does one connect at the space, but really how do we get our customers and even our own employees to be more enthusiastic about the mission of the organization and be willing to offer discretionary effort to promote the brand to others that they know. That's, in our view, the ultimate definition of engagement is when you have employees and customers that are so excited about what you're doing that they're willing to tell many others about it as well.
Well, and exactly, those are the best ambassadors for any event, are those who are not only satisfied but enthusiastic about the event. Obviously, they're going to be going out and telling other people.
Right.
And I think that's an area that's often overlooked by show organizers, is they don't do a lot to cultivate that among their exhibitors and attendees.
Agreed, and that's one of the things I think that not only is that a great, I think provide a great opportunity for those of us that are in the event industry, but it's really a movement that's catching hold in a significant way among corporations everywhere. It's an enterprise-wide strategy that we see showing up in lots of places on how to create evangelists or ambassadors for your company and your organization, and do that in a measurable way. People are familiar, I think, in probably broad strokes of something like the Net Promoter Score is one of the ways that one can measure how enthusiastic your customers are. I'd like to see that show up in the trade show space. In fact, we're at the beginnings of exploring the possibility of partnering with show management organizations over that very idea.
So that'll be interesting. So is that something coming in 2016 possibly?
It's a definite possibility. We've had some early conversations. It's premature to provide too much detail, but there is certainly a movement afoot. As you know, it exists in so many areas in the hospitality industry as people look to make decisions around, what hotel you want to go to, what restaurant you want to go to. Folks are always looking for good third-party information about where the good choices are. And I think that the exhibit and event space can take advantage of that same interest, is that we can provide or capture third-party information about events and help marketers make better informed decisions about which shows have the most promise and will help them generate the best results.
You can be the Yelp for trade shows.
There we go.
Well, speaking of events, obviously E2MA has their own event every year called Red Diamond Congress. And I know that the 2016 event is going to take on a little bit different approach or flavor, I guess, than previous years. So tell us a little bit about what's coming up in 2016 and how you're changing things up.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, we are, first of all, we'll be in Orlando in 2016, the last week of April. So that's a new location and a new dates on the calendar for us. We had traditionally been in July, but we wanted to get out of the summer vacation time frame and be more in the middle of the active season for exhibits and events. The other thing is that we will be co-locating our event with an organization called the Enterprise Engagement Alliance. These are folks that have lots of research, studies, educational content about how to generate engagement for your company. So all of our attendees at the Red Diamond Congress, which will our membership made up of exhibit and event marketers and contractors will not only get to hear about the latest and greatest trends in the world of trade shows and events, but how we together can work on strategies to improve the engagement level of their own individual companies or their trade shows in the industry. And one of the other things that we like to do at the Red Diamond Congress, as is pretty much a hallmark of our organization, is we invite in all of the stakeholders in the industry to be present and contribute to the event. We see so many events in our industry where as associations have their meetings, there are meetings for just show organizers, and there are meetings for just display builders, and meetings for just venue managers, and meetings for just general service contractors. But we see that if we want to drive the industry forward into a positive, more productive way and improving the value proposition for the customers, we need everybody involved in that conversation. So the Red Diamond Congress is the one place where industry stakeholders can interact and engage with everybody else in the industry and talk about the high-level challenges and opportunities that we have in front of us.
Well, and it all goes back to what we were saying earlier about the whole idea of teamwork and everybody working together to achieve the goals and not just, being siloed in their own little pockets.
Right. And that is exactly the thought that we've known from the very beginning, that if we wanted to create an opportunity to generate positive momentum for the industry, that we need to have all the voices in the room. We need to have all the input from all otherwise we're just talking to ourselves, and at the end of the day, that doesn't necessarily advance the agenda.
Good point. Well, Jim, is there anything else that you would like to add that we haven't covered as far as where the industry is going or what's up with E2MA?
I think we've covered a lot of ground here, and we have a lot of interesting and exciting opportunities in front of us. I appreciate the opportunity to spend the time with you, Marlis, and talk about that a little bit. I'm always available if folks have other questions and comments or want to be more involved in the effort that E2MA is working toward. You can always find our information on our website at e2ma.org, and appreciate the opportunity. Thanks very much.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here and being a guest on Trade Show Insights and sharing your insights into the industry and where it's going. So definitely it'll be interesting to have this conversation again a year from now and see what we've accomplished in 2016, right?
Yes, it will. And hopefully we'll be further down the path toward some of those topics we talked about today.
If you enjoyed today's episode and would like more, subscribe to the Trade Show Insights podcast and automatically receive future episodes on your chosen device. Simply click on the Trade Show Insights logo in the sidebar at tradeshowinsights.com, and you'll find instructions for Apple, Android, and more. Trade Show Insights is protected by the Creative Commons copyright license. You may feel free to share this recording with colleagues or embed it on your own blog as long as it's shared in its entirety and is not used for commercial purposes. To learn more, please see the link in the sidebar of the show notes at tradeshowinsights.com. Well, that's it for this episode of Trade Show Insights. Be sure to check out our show notes and archives at tradeshowinsights.com. You can also connect with me using the social media links or the contact page on the site. I'm Marlis Arnold. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us next time for more tools to improve your exhibit results.